Well, good morning, everybody. I hope you're all well this morning. Here in the Twin Cities, we have a very beautiful morning, and I hope it's nice where you are too. Well, this morning I thought, once again, I'd like to just throw it open to questions. If you have any questions on anything regarding our teaching or the practice, anything that I've said or that you've heard said here at Dharma Field. Any questions about any of this? If not, I do have a backup in my back pocket here. But I'd like to just ask you if you have anything. And yeah, and I guess you can just use that raise hand signal here, and then I should see it as long as I look for it. There we go, Cindy. Where are you? Yeah, you'll have to unmute yourself, Cindy. Yeah.
Okay, I think I did.
Yes.
In several, I think definitely in the Busho study group and other times, you've talked about things that we take as things being mental constructs. And when I hear that, what I think that means, it sounds like what you're saying is that they're not real. They're not, this isn't.
Yeah, no, I do say they're real. I give them a small R reality.
Right.
Yeah.
So that,
not dismissed.
that phrase mental constructs, is that pointing to the fact that that just the way things work, consciousness works, it separates things out? Is that what you mean by a mental construct, that something that is the whole is seemingly divided up into these various objects?
Yes. Well, isn't it? Doesn't it appear that way?
Yes, it does.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, this is something that I thought of during the Busho study group, that it's sort of, I don't know what the word is. I don't know if it's ironic, but the Zen teachings are sometimes described as beyond words, or, think something you can't talk about, and yet it's just natural that we grab onto words. Like, what does that phrase mean? What does mental constructs mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of seemed, I've thought about that several times in the Busho study group, that that we're talking about something that can't be expressed as words, and yet the text has footnotes that are more words to explain.
Yeah, we use a lot of words to fill in for the fact that we're talking about things that can't be expressed in words. Yeah. Right.
And I think that phrase mental constructs has kind of stuck with me, because in our sitting group here, one of our members would often cite, I think it's the Lankavatara Sutra. I may not have the right name, but he would talk about things as everything was just an illusion, that it's projection, that we're all projecting, and that always seemed.
That's not it at all. But go ahead.
That never made sense to me, because it still was this. There's me projecting.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That didn't seem to be.
And that's not it at all.
Okay.
Yeah, but go ahead.
But that's not what you're talking about when you use the phrase mental constructs.
Right. Yeah. It has nothing to do with your mind or my mind or minds like that, or anybody's mind. Your mind, my mind, these themselves are mental constructs. So we're talking about something else altogether. When we talk about that this world, which is of a seamless wholeness, appears divided and separated. Well, one of the separations that comes out of the whole that appears to be divided out from everything else is my mind or your mind. And so in talking about mental constructs, it isn't then that I or my mind is doing this and dividing the world and all of that. Uh, that's not at all what's being pointed out here. Now, first of all, this was going to be my backup thing in case, but I'll just drag it in here now for a moment. I wanted to look more deeply into Dogen's comment when he tells his monks, he says, the reason you don't wake up is because you don't relinquish your views. And this is a very good example of that. What's kind of pernicious about that is that so many of our views, we don't even realize we're holding them. Such as, well, my mind. So you're saying that my mind is doing this. No, I'm not saying that at all. You're interpreting it that way because you're holding a view that when we talk about something like a mind, we're talking about a person's mind, a human's mind, my mind, your mind, that sort of thing. And then we wonder, do dogs have minds? Do cats have minds? Do trees have minds? We start to ask questions like this, and just, and what am I trying to say? Just getting embroiled more and more in confusion. And so I would like to just cut through this, and I try to in my talking, but it's very helpful for us now, maybe once again, to just take a look at what we're talking about here. And this whole thing about mental constructs, what exactly are we talking about? And well, I'm not talking about something like that. You, in your mind, you are constructing something there, and the object that you're looking at or picking up or touching or speaking of, or the thought or the feeling, that these are all constructs of your mind or my mind. I'm not saying this at all. So in terms of letting go of views, and the reason we don't wake up is because we don't let go of views. That's a view that we probably don't even realize we're holding, but we do. We hold the view. This is what I've been bringing up in the Busho class. If you can just kind of let go of the idea that there are things like your mind or my mind or a cup or an apple or a headache, just let go of this. And then you also had mentioned just now this morning that it sounds like I'm saying then that there are not these things, that these things are not real, and that sort of thing. And again, I'm not saying that. Again, this is something I've repeated ad nauseum, really, for years, but I am not saying that. But we hold that view so deeply and so subtly and quietly that we don't even realize we're holding it, that there are things, and now Steve is saying, he's talking in a way as if there are not these things. Well, okay, then how are we going to deal with the fact that there appears to be these things? And, so we can't just dismiss stuff like that. And this is why we have this teaching of the two truths, which I won't get into now directly in detail, but that's, something to always kind of bear in mind. Don't hold on to it as a view that there are these two truths, but just realize that, because you won't be able to defend that, but still it's helpful for us to just bear in mind that these things that appear here, they appear to be coming and going and changing, and until we wake up to their true nature of what's taking place here, we'll think that this is absolutely true and real, that there is a computer screen in front of me now, that I'm seeing your image and the image of many other people here now. That this is true and real. Well, it's real enough. And I can't deny the appearances of this and the audio contact and all this kind of stuff. This is true enough. It's real enough. And it really is real. in the way that we define it as real, but it's real with a small r. It's not ultimately real. It is, well, we can say a mental construct. These are objects of mind that are appearing here. And soon as anything appears at all, it appears to come from somewhere. It appears like it wasn't here a moment ago or 20 years ago or however long, but here it is now. It has a past. It's come out of the past. It came into existence at some time. No matter what we're talking about, whether it's a headache or a doorknob or myself, it will have this appearance that it came into existence. Now, if we're talking about it or thinking about it or concerned about it, it seems to be going on right now. And eventually we know whatever it is, it will fade away, it will die, it will go out of existence. That is how this world appears. And the awakened do not discard appearances, can't throw this away. It is real enough, but it's not ultimately what is happening here, because if it were, now the world doesn't make sense. We'll never understand what is that. There's just this huge mystery to it all. Well, how did we get here? Well, where did this come from? And what is consciousness and what is mind? And then we think, well, the parts here, the physical things in this universe here, they come together in a certain way. Eventually, they evolved into all these different beings, and eventually we have human beings, and their brains are such that now they can create this consciousness. Stuff like that. We have all these ideas, and we hold on to these views, and we test them out, and sometimes they seem to hold up to a certain extent, but in the end, it still remains a mystery. We don't know what is going on here, as long as we are holding to views. Nagarjuna showed us this 2,000 years ago, that anything you hold up there as a mental construct in some way contains within itself, just that very construction itself, its own demise. It contains within itself its contradictory nature with what is actually being experienced. And and these are subtle teachings. They're not heady teachings. They're not intellectual teachings. You don't need to be incredibly smart or any of this kind of stuff. People think that, Nagarjuna, he's so heady, even Dogen here. Well, what's difficult about this is not that you need to figure some arcane, thing out here, like some arcane piece of mathematics or something like that. We don't need this. It's just a matter of realizing the illusory nature of what we're holding, what we pick up. That there's well, it's illusory. It doesn't hold up by itself. Something else is actually taking place here. To the extent that we hold on to the appearances of you or me or my mind or my own mental construct, if this is what we think we're talking about, as long as we hold on to views like this, or any view at all, really, of a constructed thing in some way, some limited thing set out in conjunction or in relationship with other things, as long as we are holding to stuff like this, it will continue to remain a mystery. And the reason for that is because things aren't this way. And we can see this directly. We don't need to figure anything out, because to figure something out is to go back into that world of mental constructs and try to create a new construction that will finally do it. And this is the problem. We can't resort to the very thing that we're struggling with and having a hard time with, even though we don't even really realize that that's actually the problem. It's so subtle that it's hard for us even to notice this. And then when we point out stuff like this, that, well, the cup or whatever it is, I have a cup right here. Where is it? There it is. And something like this that we can touch and look at, and all of this, anything at all, really, that seems to be individuated into some particular thing. We, as long as we regard any of this as having the kind of substance that we naively grant it, that we unquestioningly grant it, without even really thinking about it. It's just there, and we buy it, we accept it. As long as we continue to think that this is the nature of reality, that this is the nature of what is taking place here, the nature of the things that are appearing here and all of that. Now, we're going to be, we will remain in this kind of this mysterious place, and nothing will make sense. So something else altogether has to take place. This is why Dogen tells his monks, the reason you don't wake up is because you don't relinquish your views. This includes the views that you don't even realize you're holding, such as the assumption that I exist. We don't, what do you mean? Well, of course I exist. We'll react like that to that kind of a statement. Instead of just looking at this, well, what do we think is existing here that we're calling I? And at some point, and you might have to do this for years, perhaps, possibly, but if you just continue to look at that, or anything else for that matter, it will start to reveal itself as nothing at all in particular, certainly not anything you can get hold of. Its true nature is that. It is that of appearances. And again, the appearances cannot be dismissed. They cannot be gotten rid of. This would be very dangerous for us to think, well, we do use this word empty, that these things are empty of any kind of substantiality. So you're going to walk across a busy street without looking for the stoplight or whatever, that might be there, that the rules we should go by and all this, as if you're not going to get hit. Yeah, well, maybe enough cars will be stopping for you and that sort of thing, but sooner or later, you're probably, you're going to get injured. We can't defy the appearances and carry on as if, well, the cars and the trucks, they're empty. We'll say something like, but that's just more mental construction. We're forming an idea there. We shouldn't form any idea at all about emptiness. It's just a word that's pointing to something about the nature of what's being experienced here. Don't take hold of anything. It might sound like I'm giving you a view now. Not really. If you think so, I'd like to hear what it is, because then maybe I can disabuse you of that. Because I'm really not handing you anything for you to grasp or to take hold of. It's more a matter of just examine the actual experiences that we have. That's why Nagarjuna's masterwork, the Mula Madhyamaka Krika, 27 chapters, every one of them contains the word examination. Examination of motion, examination of the Four Noble Truths, examination of time, examination of movement. This is, this is the word that we examine. We just look or listen, pay attention. We don't think about it, because that's now more mental construction. And as for what is mental construction, well, it's that thinking mind or whatever that's being engaged now, that's putting things together. It's constructing stuff. We're taking this taste, this flavor, and we're associating it with that object there, the apple or whatever. And then we think within that apple, so the apple has that look and color, yeah, but it also has that taste, and but this is it's just kind of mental construction. It's all mine. This isn't to say again that it is nothing. Obviously, there is that taste, there is that color, there is that flavor. All these appearances, the trucks on the road that you don't want to just start casually walking out across the road when it's very busy with traffic, so there are these appearances, and these appearances are very often lawful, in that they'll continue to behave in predictable ways. If you wander off into a busy street, there's a good chance you're going to get hit. Far better chance than if you just stayed on the sidewalk, that sort of thing. So it isn't a matter then of defying all of this or defying the appearances or, anything of that sort. All we're examining here is the nature of what is taking place here. And at some point, we might see that there isn't any substantiality whatsoever to any of this. And if we truly see that, This would be seeing that if I were printing it out, I would italicize it. This is not seeing an object. This is not seeing an idea. This is not seeing, it is just simply seeing the nature of reality, seeing the nature of just what this is, going on here. And in time, if we were to continue to examine this, we begin to realize that the nature of all of this is mental. It is mind. And even in the book that I've finished now, it'll be coming out now by October. It should be here anyway, I hope. But anyway, in there, that's much of what I do, at least in the beginning of the book. I'll just take you through and show you all the different ways in which everything kind of reduces to mind, as its fundamental nature. And yeah, but there's this function of mind that appears to be dividing the world up into this and that. And that is what we call, that's what the awakened would call consciousness. It is not it's not a particular thing at all, nor is mind, It's not none of these things are anything that you can grasp, but it is what we can see and know directly. And it truly is what we know. And so this, has everything to do with that book I put out too. The subtitle is, what is it? What we know but don't believe. Actually, I wanted to call it What We Know But Can't Believe, because we actually can't believe. But what I'm pointing to there, what we're left with is what we actually know. And what is that? Well, that's the actual nature of reality. We know this. We don't pick up on it. We don't actualize what it is that we know generally, because we actualize and get caught up with the concepts, the stuff that is broken out. Well, there's my mind, and and there's you out there, and the dog and the cat, and there's this and that, and and this thing I have to have done by tomorrow, and all. So we're just really caught up with all these things. And again, it isn't that we should ignore these things or let them go. Some of these things are, and by the way, too, in terms of taking care of things, what's the purpose of it? Well, if this is all it is and everything is empty, well, then why should I even care, about what happens? And I'll give you the reason why is, if your interest is in waking up to reality, it is important that we learn to keep the mind settled, and that we keep the mind focused, meaning that we don't start running away with the ideas that we have about me, or about what it is that I want, or what I want to do, or what I'm afraid of, or and then in regards to other people, or the different situations or stuff like that, we will get lost in things like that. Or even about the rules and regulations, even about, say, something like meditation. Well, I must, sit every day, and Steve would like to have me sit every day. And well, you're presuming something about me, if that happens to be a thought that you have. It's just a matter of, there's no rules or regulations, and I'm not trying to dictate what you should do or shouldn't do or whatever. I'm just pointing out that it would be very helpful for all of us, me too, if we can learn to bring the mind back when we start to get agitated or worried about this or that. And certainly we have plenty of things in our world today that can agitate us and worry us and concern us. And I'm concerned too about the way things are going today in the world. But that's one thing. It's another thing to be completely beside myself and driven, to feel like I have to get out there now. And that's to perpetuate the very entanglements and the problems that we find ourselves in now. So, but it doesn't mean to not take care of these things, or to not react to these things, or whatever is really, but we can learn to do this with a calm mind, and with a mind that has a pretty clear sense of the nature of what is unfolding here and why, and, and stuff like that. So, but all of that stuff is mental construct, the things that will otherwise take us away. But again, these things aren't bad or wrong, or we shouldn't have these things, or they're really nothing. That's just more mental construction. this is what awakening is. What enlightenment is to finally see what delusion is. And delusion is being caught up with the illusory world in such a way that we don't realize what's illusory about it. And not everything about it is illusory. There's one thing that's not, and that's what we know, and that's what we can wake up to. So I don't know, did I help you, Cindy?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank
No,
you.
thank you. And let's see, Bryant.
Good morning. It's my first time joining your group. I've had your books since they've come out, Pure and Simple, and all those. And I've told many other people to get them and read them, because I've always thought that you were one of the best explainers of all the Dharma that I've come across. But regardless, so my question then, I'm actually very pleased with Cindy's question, and for the most part, you kind of answered my question. It was going to be something very particular and very specific, and I didn't know where the group's thinking was, or where you were all at. But so I've read the Mula Madhyamaka Karika a number of times and studied it on my own quite a bit, along with a lot of other of the the Tibetan canon, the Chinese canon, etc. And one thing it's still I've had a perception. I've been meditating since the 80s. I have this perception of what I would call, and what others would call, pure awareness. But then I'm not quite sure if that's just another perception. I'm labeling this, whatever this is. In the Dzogchen tradition, they talk about Rigpa, and some talk about it as this awareness that exists apart from conditions, apart from any of the constructs and everything, which would seem to reify it into a non-empty thing. And so I've always, for a long time now, been kind of a prasangika majjhimika, in the sense of taking full emptiness as the actual reality of things. Nothing is reified. But then all these traditions seem to point to this pure awareness as somehow something that does exist in a non-empty way. So I guess that would be my question. What, is there an awareness that is our mind, which is separate from the dependently arisen appearances that come to our mind? Does our mind exist prior to those appearances? Does it co-arise with them? Mm-hmm. So that's it.
Okay. Well, the short answer is no. There's no such thing as that. Wow, there's quite a bit there.
Yeah, I figured. You don't have to, that might be for another time, or
yeah.
But
well, there were several things as you were talking that I could have jumped in on, and but being the old duffer that I am now, it's hard for me to remember now exactly. I should have been taking notes here or something. But because some of the things you said were a bit, but emptiness itself is not a thing. And,
right.
So you were kind of coming back to that several times, that is there, I think you were asking, is there something there that is this awareness, that is not what you were saying, kind of?
Yeah, and, that there's a number of traditions that seem to get to their deepest teaching, quote unquote. You arrive at a place where they're saying that this, whatever they call it, whether it's pure awareness, pure consciousness, this knowing that you've been referring to, which
you're right.
I take that from the Lanka and some other of the third turning. So I guess it boils down for me to, even this knowing, is that a non-dependently arisen thing? In other words, is it a non-empty thing that exists apart from appearances?
No, and that's why I was saying there's no such thing. It just simply is thus, and it isn't a thing. And but it appears just as well. We see it here. It's just all this and that, and and that's that function of mind. If you want to look at it in terms of mind, that's that the function of whatever it is we're talking about here. This pure awareness that we otherwise would call consciousness, and consciousness is the separating out of the appearances. There's this, and then there's that, and the next thing. But all of these things that are appearing here are empty of any kind of substantiality. They're not anything unto themselves. If they were, they would be absolute. If there were a cup here as such, and this isn't to say that there isn't a cup here. I'm holding a cup, so how could I say there isn't a cup? But if we, in the way that we naively think of it, we think there's a cup here, as if there's really a cup here, if there were such a thing as that, it would be absolute.
Right.
And being absolute, it can't be in relationship to other things. Some of these teachings that you had pointed to, they make this kind of mistake as if there could be absolutes that are still in relationship with other things. And that's the kind of mistake that's going on there. And it ultimately comes up to the question, or the result that you had at the end there. And that's why I said no. And Nagarjuna himself clarifies this in his list of emptinesses, the 18 emptinesses, which is basically the one to take note of there is the emptiness of emptiness. Right. The emptiness itself is empty. So any individuated thing at all, whether it's a physical thing or a thought or a feeling, anything at all, including time and space, and anything at all that can be delineated and spoken of and labeled, these things are empty of any kind of own being, any kind of substantiality. Own being is just another word for, just say selfhood, that they are what they are and that sort of thing. They are appearances. The reality is always, well, as soon as we put a word, it's not particularly helpful, right. But it's totality, it's wholeness. And so even if we pick up the object like a cup, there it is, there's totality right there. And then we think there's totality is in that cup. Well, now we've just reified the cup as if there were a cup. It isn't a cup, it's wholeness, it's totality, it's just dust. Pure awareness is finally seeing this nature with nothing else added to it, nothing else added to it. And that does not then endorse the idea, there really is a cup after all. No, that's we're right back to square one again with that. And it's just simply thus. And this is something that we can, at some point finally see directly. We're not going to get there intellectually or through reading books or, things such as this. But even Dogen tells us, he says, cease from practice based on intellectual understanding. Right now in our Wednesday night study group, we're looking at his Busho, or his Buddha nature. And this could seem very heady and very intellectual, all of this. And yet Dogen himself, but if you read it, you'll have a devil of a time trying to, construct, something out of it. Because he's just pointing in this thing. And in the end, there's nothing to put together there. We don't need to rely on our intellectual apparatus to, make sense of this, because all we're going to end up creating there is just more thought constructs. And we'll never really get to the bottom of just what is going on here. We arrive at that through just seeing. And then this would be the seeing that I would italicize in my writings, which means that we're seeing without an object. And this is pure awareness. It's another word for it.
Yeah, I've come to, I thought that the Vimalakirti Nirdesa, with his answer of just silence, when
Yeah.
all the bodhisattvas are asked to describe non-duality.
Yeah.
And Manjushri says, well, what about your answer? And Valmalakirti doesn't answer at all, because to use language is the very separating. And so
Yeah.
already we're in duality again. And so I
Yes.
guess to paraphrase Brad Warner, just sit down and shut up, and don't don't cogitate about this. Just as we do on the cushion, just let all the thoughts go. And what do you have left? Well, that's the awareness, I guess.
Yeah.
So, and the Buddha nature thing has intrigued me for some time, and I'm wondering if that's, I'm a newbie here. Is that a possibility to join that group, or is it?
Oh yeah, yeah. You can just tune in. We've just had our 13th meeting, but all 13 of them are available online if you join in the group there. I don't quite know how the mechanism, all that stuff works exactly, but I do believe anybody can.
Are you in the middle of it, or almost done with it, or I don't want to join?
We're approaching the middle, but it'll probably go on for.
Okay.
I'm thinking maybe for another month or two. But any of you, if you want to jump in. But what I'm saying is that all of the ones that we've covered so far have been recorded, and they're also available to you.
Oh, so I can catch up.
So you can catch up to where we are now. Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to quickly jump in and say that what you want to do, Brian, is just send me an email, and I'll send you the password for that. So you can
okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Mike? Well, are you done, Brian?
Oh,
Brian?
yeah. I mean, well, this topic is never done, I don't think.
No,
but,
okay.
But
as long as you're done. Okay.
I appreciate your efforts.
Sure.
I knew it was not a softball question, so thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and yeah, Mike.
Yes. In the conclusion of your answer to Cindy's question, you mentioned the one thing that we do know. What is the one thing that we do know?
Oh, reality.
Okay.
Except it's not a thing, and it's not one.
Yeah. Okay.
Which isn't to say that it's not one.
Oh, okay.
It's not one, it's not two, it's not multiple.
Yeah.
But it is the one thing this is what we see directly, and we always see this. Though if it's a cup I'm focused on, and we think there's a cup, and we don't realize that this is totality. It is what we always see this. If it's the itch from a mosquito bite, and I'm focused on that, and everything, but this is totality, showing up as this sensation of an itch or a little bump on my cheek or wherever the bite might be. And but it's always totality. It's always wholeness. The bump, the cup, the itch sense, all this, this is what we're taken by. But this is the conceptual, belongs to the conceptual constructs that are made out of this, what is otherwise a seamless whole. And this totality and wholeness, we might think, well, that's something huge. I mean, no, it doesn't have any size at all. And this isn't too mysterious. How big is a thought? Well, we could think about, well, gee, I bet you, I don't know. Think of something kind of Einstein arriving at E equals mc squared. That's a huge thought. It reduces down to this little equation, but it's just, as opposed to a little thought like, I don't know, well, the thought of a cup. But yeah, we might think that's, so there's big thoughts and there's little thoughts, that sort of thing. But actually, what are we talking about? Are we talking about anything that even has size, that the concept of size even belongs to it? So that's what we have here. It doesn't belong to anything at all, ultimately. It appears to belong to physical things, and distances and stuff like this. We move into the more pure mental, what can I say, fabric of whatever it is we're experiencing here. notions like size and time and dimension and other sorts of things begin to drop away. So if we talk about wholeness or totality, just remember, we're not talking about something big. We're not talking about something small. We're talking about something that transcends size. Huang Po speaks of this when he just simply refers to the one mind, another term that we could have used, Bryant, that Huang Po, he says the one mind. He says there's only the one mind besides which nothing exists. And it doesn't belong to the categories of things that exist or do not exist. It's neither big nor small or old or young. It's neither green nor yellow. It transcends all dimensions, times, names, changes, appearances, and this is, that's how he was speaking of. I can't even say it because we're not talking about something in particular, just this, and it is always thus. It always has this appearance. This is what doesn't change. And what is that appearance? Was the appearances of stuff coming and going. And those are appearances. And it doesn't mean that there aren't things coming and going. If there appears to be, and it feels like there is, and all of this, well, then it does have a kind of reality. It's just that if you grasp that as ultimately this is what's real, then there's all this stuff that's coming and going, and I'm sitting here in front of a computer screen and all of this. No, that's what we think. So we have this teaching then that things are not as they appear to be, nor are they otherwise. Can't carry on as if things aren't the way they appear to be. As I said, you step out into traffic, you might pay some severe consequences for that. Well, are they? Well, it's still empty. Yeah, but there's going to be pain and blood and, and all kinds of suffering there. Well, what's wrong with that in the end? Well, apart from the fact that it's just immediately not pleasant, at least for one who might be suffering it. In addition to that, the mind is disturbed. And it's more difficult than perhaps to wake up to the true nature of what's actually unfolding here. That's what's wrong with it.
Okay.
If we want to label that as wrong. It's only wrong, of course, if your intention is to settle the mind and to wake up. No, then that's not the way to go. So, okay. Well, did that help you there,
Yes.
Mike? Yeah,
Yes.
okay. All right. Where we have, Martin, I guess it is, MRTN.
Yeah,
Is that you, Martin? Oh, yeah,
it
I
is.
can see it on your, yeah.
Hi, Steve.
Yeah, hi, Martin.
There's something that's been confusing me, and you'd actually offered a clarification for this in a recent talk, and I don't remember exactly how you'd put it, but it was about the notion of artificial intelligence. And I'd come to understand through that talk that what you were talking about was more about the notion of people think they can make an intelligence or they can generate consciousness.
Right.
And
Yeah.
this obviously seems ludicrous to me, but
Yeah.
would it be accurate to say then that in much the same way that we can bear children, but we don't create consciousnesses, I suppose we put in place the circumstances to allow the expression of consciousness, and that's what we maybe would call a child or a person, an expression of consciousness in a particular way, and however it turns up. And obviously this is complete speculation, but could you possibly imagine an artificial receptacle for the expression of consciousness?
Well, I don't know what you mean by an artificial receptacle, but the point that covers all of this.
Non-biological.
Yeah, I understand that part, but excuse me. But what I wanted to, and thanks for bringing, this is kind of a big area, but there's one little thing I think I could say about it that might, at first when you hear this, it's going to be like, what are you even talking about? But it really kind of settles the whole thing. But we think that consciousness is something that inheres in something, or that is owned by something, that I have consciousness, you have consciousness. Of course, I can say, well, I know my consciousness directly because it's my seeing and hearing. I don't know about yours for sure, but you have the appearances of somebody who's kind of like me. And, you have eyes and ears, and I can even converse with you and you respond in a sensible way that makes, that comports with what I'm saying, and back and forth, so we can have a conversation. So I would, based on all of that, I would assume you have consciousness too. I don't quite have those experiences with trees. Sometimes I feel like maybe the forest or something is saying something to me, but not in words or in English or something. I might be just having some impressions. But of course, I might even wonder, well, in their own way, maybe they, you know, or animals or something, do they have? So we'll think this way. And here's and that leads us into all kinds of questions, and then research and stuff like this. And can we construct something then that holds this thing we call consciousness? What I want to say is that nothing holds consciousness, including you or me. Consciousness isn't something that I have. First of all, we can't even pin down just what that word I refers to, or you, or Martin, or we can use our names. But what exactly are we talking about here? There isn't anything that possesses consciousness. Consciousness itself, what we can wake up to and realize, is of the very fabric of reality itself. It's of this pure awareness, this whole mind, the one mind. It is of that, and it is the aspect of this one mind that appears that function. It seems to function. That's only because it also breaks out time as well, but it seems to function as that which is, well, put it this way, there is this aspect of reality that appears as this and that and the next thing. And with that comes time and space and dimension and thought and feeling and all the rest of it. This breaking up of what otherwise remains as a seamless whole. And then we start to wonder then, well, some of these things, particularly human beings for sure, you know, or at least me for sure, you know, if you want to get kind of solipsistic about it, has this consciousness, yeah. But that's not how the awakened see it. And if we think that consciousness is something produced by a brain, or which then makes us feel like, well, gosh, maybe that's just a patch of, you know, chunk of material here. Maybe we can put material together ourselves. We're getting very sophisticated now in what we can do. Put it together in just the right way, where we'll create a machine here now that actually has this consciousness. Well, yeah, it's because we think that consciousness is something produced by a brain. But there's no evidence of that. And if we continue to think in these terms, consciousness remains a mystery. And I've tracked a lot of the literature. I've given up on it on the last few. I've read enough of everything at this point. I'm getting old. I'm getting tired. But for 40 years, consciousness was always being referred to by people who research this stuff, the scientists and you know, scientists of various kinds and brain researchers. They speak of it as the mystery of consciousness. Way back there in 1992, was it? Daniel Dennett, I got his book right up here in front of me, wrote Consciousness Explained back in 1992. Well, he hasn't really explained anything. If anything, he should have titled it Consciousness Explained Away. But he didn't really explain consciousness, and here people are still calling it, the researchers that do the work here in this area, they call it a mystery. And it will remain a mystery as long as we hold the view, see, we don't relinquish our views, we hold the view that consciousness inheres in a person or in a brain or something like this. As long as we hold that view, it will remain a mystery. If we stop and just look at consciousness directly, there I would italicize the look, or if we just see, we'd have direct experience of consciousness. Just look at it and we can see what its true nature actually is, as long as you don't talk to yourself and say anything about it. But it is the very fabric of reality itself, or the one mind, as Wang Po put it, or you know, other people speak of it. This can be seen directly. I can assure you of that, but don't take my word for it. It's just a matter you need at some point we can wake up to this and just see that. And I couldn't, what comes along with that saying is you realize it couldn't possibly be any other way. Because if it were some other way, and we do have these things that now possess this and that, including one of the things could be consciousness, yeah, but now these things are all of an absolute nature, in which case they can't relate to anything. The whole universe would shut down at that point. There'd be no mind, there'd be no consciousness. Once we see the nature of consciousness, the nature of actual immediate direct experience, and we'll have to see this wordlessly, but we'll also see that it could not be any other way. Were there things in the naive way that we think there are things, now we can't explain consciousness. And that's exactly where most of us are, including with all this research that goes on with the background assumption by everyone that consciousness is something produced by a brain. Were we to see that we actually don't have things as such, and my book deals with this, a book that'll be coming out. I don't talk about it quite so directly, but I'll give you enough background and ways of looking at this from all different angles. I hope it'll just kind of be there. I do sort of suggest it here and there, but were things in the way that we naively think, and what it really comes down to is we grant absoluteness to everything. Now nothing makes sense. Nothing will make sense, and certainly not in mind or the nature of reality. All of this remains a deep mystery to us. But in seeing directly what the actual experience is, and this mind doesn't adhere in objects. It's the reverse almost, if anything at all. It's mind, but it won't be your mind or my mind. But it's just mind that generates this appearance and this generation of it, and that's even really the wrong word, because it just really is this appearance of it, which is consciousness. And that's an aspect of this one mind that is directly apparent. And yeah, so now I don't know if I answered your question there, but
Well, yeah, very much so, in the sense that you can't really answer it because it's inexpressible. But yeah, I get
yeah,
now
well,
much more what you mean. Yeah.
Right. And in the end, there's really no answer as such.
Yeah.
But in the book I just wrote, it's called The Grand Delusion. And the Grand Delusion is that we think that there are things, and as opposed to nothing. But we can wake up to the fact that you actually can't say that. We also can't say that there are not things. How can you say that? It looks like there's things, and it looks like I'm here and you're here. So it isn't yes or no. Like Wang Po said long ago, he saw this. It's pretty obvious in the way he wrote. It doesn't belong to the categories of things that exist or do not exist. If we think there's existence, and then there's must be non-existence as well, well, yeah, but no, nothing's going to make sense. You're not going to put this together in a way that you can understand it. But you don't need to, because we can see directly. And all I can do in my teaching and what I've done in this book, I just keep giving you examples and showing you how this construct doesn't make sense, that one doesn't make sense. And I'm talking about constructs that we just, much of the time, we don't even realize we're assuming anything. But it is the views that we hold deeply and quietly in our minds that prevent us from actually seeing the true nature of what's being experienced here. And so consciousness is not something that we can create. If anything, but it's not quite the opposite of that, but it's very close to looking like the opposite of that, that consciousness creates us as such, but that's not exactly right either. We're not even really created. Whatever it is that we are, you'll never point it down, but it comes right along with the very fabric of reality itself, along with consciousness. So, but the true nature of this is just waiting there for us to, but the only way you're going to see it really is to, well, you said Brad Warner, was it, that just said, sit down and shut up. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. But you have to really shut up. Let the mind go quiet. This is Yakusan. I use the example of Yakusan one of the teacher in my lineage that I inherited from Katagiri Roshi, but centuries ago now. Yaku-san, most of you know this, I think, because you've heard me say it so many times, but he's just sitting in meditation. His teacher comes along, Sekito Kizun, and he says, what are you doing? And he says, I'm not doing anything. And so Sekito says, so what is it you're not doing? And he says, even Buddha's doing it. Well, first he says, so you're sitting idly. And then he says, well, if I were sitting idly, I'd be doing something. So what is it you're not doing? And then he says, even Buddhas don't know. And so he's sitting like that. Think about, he's pointing to just how quiet the mind can become, where you're not inserting a view, thinking it is this or it's that, or it must be this or that, and that's why, like with Dharma teaching, we're not really supplying you with answers or anything. I'm not really giving you any kind of answers here as such. Just pointing out, and this is what we can do. This is what I do in my teaching, is what I've done in my books. Just point out how we get it wrong. And then how it is can't be spoken of, but we can certainly see it. And we already do. We already have this knowledge, direct knowledge of reality. So, oh my goodness, I've used up the hour here. I was going to see if there are any more hands. But fortunately, I guess they've disappeared. So I thought there was one more, but is that okay, Martin?
It is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think looks like the hour is up pretty much. So I'll just end it here. But thank you very much. It's good to see you all.